At 2:17 a.m., a phone rang inside an empty house. No one was supposed to be there. So who answered? Pause. This is not a story the police like to talk about. No documentaries, no official conclusions. But tonight, we uncover what was quietly buried. The house stood at the end of Cedar Hollow Road, abandoned. Before we continue, take a moment to subscribe to Mystery Chronicles. Stories like this disappear quickly, but the questions they raise stay forever. Boarded up, forgotten by time, neighbors called it the quiet house. Because no matter how loud the wind screamed, that place stayed silent. Until the night the phone rang. The welfare check. It started with a welfare check. A routine call, low priority, one officer, 10 minutes, at most. That's what dispatch thought. Officer Daniel Rourke had been with the department for 12 years. Solid, dependable, the kind of cop who volunteered for night shifts because the pay was better and the streets were quieter. When dispatch sent him to Cedar Hollow Road, he thought it was a mistake. That house has been empty for years, he told them. Just check it out, they replied. Someone had called about lights inside. Rourke pulled up at 2:34 a.m. The house looked dead, no lights, no movement, just darkness pressing against boarded windows. He stepped out of his cruiser. The air felt wrong immediately. Too still, too cold for May. He approached the front door. It was unlocked. That was the first strange thing. The house had been sealed by the county 6 years earlier. Metal brackets, padlocks, official notices about trespassing, but the door swung open with barely a touch. Rourke clicked on his flashlight and stepped inside. The beam cut through darkness thick as smoke. Dust everywhere, furniture covered in sheets, the smell of abandonment, but something caught his eye immediately. On a small table in the living room sat a landline phone. Cream-colored, rotary dial, cord plugged into the wall. Active. Rourke stared at it. The house had been without power for over 6 years. He reached for his radio to call it in. That's when he noticed something else. Footprints in the dust, but not leading to the phone. Leading away from it, toward the stairs. And they were fresh. The dispatcher's account. Sarah Mendez had been working dispatch for the county for 9 years. She'd heard everything. Domestic calls, traffic accidents, the occasional false alarm. But the call that came in at 2:17 a.m. that night was different. It wasn't a voice call, she explains, sitting in her small apartment, hands wrapped around a coffee mug. It was just open air, like someone had picked up a phone and was just breathing. The call lasted exactly 14 seconds. Then it disconnected. What made Sarah flag it wasn't the silence. It was the location. The system showed the call originating from 1847 Cedar Hollow Road. A house that had been abandoned since 2018. A house that shouldn't have had active phone service. I pulled up the property records right away, Sarah says. No utilities, no active accounts, nothing, but the phone company's system showed an outgoing call. From that address. At 2:17 a.m. Sarah sent Rourke to investigate. She thought maybe it was teenagers. Or squatters. Or a system glitch. She never imagined what he would find. The impossible phone. When the phone company sent a technician 3 days later, they were baffled. The line was active, not just connected, active, with a dial tone, but according to their records, service to that address had been terminated in 2017. 7 years ago, the technician, Marcus Webb, had worked for the company for 23 years. He'd seen old lines stay live occasionally due to crossed wiring or administrative errors. But this was different. The line had usage, Marcus explains. Outgoing calls, timestamps, data logs. Someone had been using this phone. For years, the phone company pulled the full records. What they found changed everything. The house had made 5 outgoing calls over the past 7 years. Always at 2:17 a.m., always exactly 14 seconds long. Always. The disappearance of Marjorie Klein. Marjorie Klein was 42 when she disappeared. Quiet, predictable, a creature of routine. She worked as a medical transcriptionist from home. The same job for 11 years. She paid her bills 2 weeks early. She waved at neighbors from her porch every morning at 7 a.m. while drinking tea. She never traveled, never dated, never caused trouble. Marjorie was like clockwork, says her neighbor, Patricia Hollis. You could set your watch by her. Every morning, there she'd be. Same time, same cup, same wave. Patricia lived 3 houses down for 15 years. She watched Marjorie's routines like they were her own. That's why she noticed immediately when something was wrong. On the morning of March 17, 2017, Marjorie wasn't on her porch. The tea wasn't there, the door stayed closed. Patricia waited until noon, then she walked over and knocked. No answer. She called the police. The last day, investigators pieced together Marjorie's final day from security footage, phone records, and witness statements. March 16, 2017, 6:47 a.m. Marjorie's bedroom light turns on, visible from the street. 7:02 a.m. she appears on her porch with tea. Waves at Patricia. 9:15 a.m. she logs into her work system remotely. Begins transcribing medical files. 12:34 p.m. lunch break. She microwaves leftovers. Her kitchen light is visible through a gap in her curtains. 2 p.m. logs back into work. 5:47 p.m. logs out for the day. 6:15 p.m. a neighbor sees her checking her mailbox. 8:30 p.m. her living room TV is on. The glow is visible through her window. 11:17 p.m. her bedroom light turns off. Then nothing. By 7 a.m. the next morning, Marjorie Klein had vanished. When police entered the house the next afternoon, nothing seemed disturbed. Her car was in the driveway. Her purse was on the kitchen counter. Her phone was charging on her nightstand. Her bed looked slept in. The back door was unlocked. But there were no signs of struggle. No blood, no broken glass, no overturned furniture. It was as if she had simply stood up in the middle of the night and walked out. But Marjorie would never do that. My sister was terrified of the dark, says Ellen Klein, Marjorie's younger sister, her voice cracking. She slept with a nightlight until she was 30. She wouldn't even take the trash out after sunset. Ellen sits in her home in the neighboring county, surrounded by photographs of Marjorie. Birthday parties, holidays, ordinary moments frozen in time. She was also afraid of highways, of driving far from home, of being alone in unfamiliar places. Marjorie's fears weren't abstract, they were specific, documented, real. After their mother died when Marjorie was 19, she developed severe anxiety. She saw a therapist for years. She took medication. She built her entire life around feeling safe. Her house was her sanctuary. She would never just leave, Ellen says firmly. Never, not voluntarily. But Detective Howard Bell disagreed. The investigation that wasn't. Detective Howard Bell was assigned to Marjorie's case on March 18, 2017. He was 56, 28 years on the force. Decorated, respected. He interviewed neighbors, reviewed her financial records, checked her phone and computer. After 6 weeks, he closed the case. Official determination, voluntary disappearance. There's no evidence of foul play, Bell wrote in his report. Klein was an adult with no legal obligations. She had savings. She had the means to start over somewhere else. Ellen Klein fought the decision. She hired a private investigator. She contacted the FBI. She appeared on local news. But without evidence of a crime, there was nothing anyone could do. The case went cold, and Detective Bell retired 3 years later with full honors. He moved to Florida, bought a boat, disappeared into quiet anonymity, until 7 years later, when phone records revealed something impossible. His number was one of the 3 that the house kept calling. And according to phone company, number belonged to Marjorie Klein's old cell phone, the one found charging on her nightstand the morning she vanished. Ellen Klein had kept the number active for 3 years, hoping her sister might somehow call. She never did, but something else did. I got a call once, Ellen whispers, her face pale at the memory. It was maybe a year after Marjorie disappeared. Middle of the night, I answered and there was just silence. Not breathing, not static, just empty air. Ellen asked who it was. No response. She said her sister's name. The line went dead, exactly 14 seconds after she answered. She thought it was a wrong number. A pocket dial, something meaningless. She never connected it to the house until investigators showed her the records. The call came from 1847 Cedar Hollow Road. From a house that shouldn't have had power. From a phone that shouldn't have worked. At 2:17 a.m. The second number belonged to Ellen's old landline. The one she had disconnected in 2020 when she moved. According to records, the house called that number twice. Once in 2019, once in 2020, just weeks before Ellen disconnected the service. Ellen never answered those calls because she was asleep, but her answering machine picked up. When investigators asked if she still had those old tapes, Ellen went pale. I threw them out when I moved, she said. I never thought. She never thought they'd matter. But what if they did? What if something was recorded on those tapes? A voice, a sound, a message. Now they're gone, lost to a landfill somewhere. And whatever was on them will never be heard. The detective's secret. The third number was the most disturbing. It belonged to Detective Howard Bell. Not his cell phone, his home landline, the one registered to his house in Florida. The house called Bell's number 3 times. 2017, 2020, and 2022. Each time, according to phone company records, the line connected. Meaning someone picked up. When confronted by investigators, Bell denied everything. "I never received any calls from that number," he said through his attorney. This is harassment based on faulty data. But phone company records don't lie. Duration, 14 seconds. Connection, established. Status, answered. Someone picked up that phone 3 times, in the middle of the night, and stayed on the line for exactly 14 seconds before hanging up. If it wasn't Bell, then who? And why would a disconnected house keep calling a retired detective? Unless he knew something, unless he'd always known. The third number, there was something else in the records. Something investigators almost missed. Before calling Marjorie's phone, Ellen's phone, and Bell's phone, the house had tried calling a 4th number. Multiple times. But that number never connected. It had been disconnected years earlier. When investigators traced it, they found something shocking. The number had belonged to a small office building downtown. Suite 7, a private practice. Dr. Raymond Cass, psychologist, the same therapist Marjorie had seen for years to manage her anxiety. The same therapist who died in a car accident in 2016. 1 year before Marjorie disappeared. His practice was shut down. His files were sealed. His number was disconnected. But the house kept trying to call him. Investigators pulled Cass's old records through a court order. Marjorie Klein had been his patient for 11 years. She saw him twice a month, right up until his death. In her last session, 6 weeks before he died, Marjorie told Dr. Cass something that he noted in her file. Patient reports feeling watched in her home. States she hears sounds at night. Believes someone has been inside. Dismisses this as anxiety but effect suggests genuine fear. Dr. Cass scheduled a follow-up. Marjorie never made it, because 3 weeks later, he was dead. And 4 months after that, she vanished. When forensic teams swept the house after the mysterious call, they brought equipment. Thermal scanners, ground-penetrating radar, electrical meters. They were looking for the source of the phone's power. Because nothing about it made sense. The main electrical panel was dead, rusted, corroded, but that phone and used it for one purpose. To keep that phone line active. The crawl space. The hidden wiring led down, through the floor, into a crawl space beneath the stairs that didn't appear on the house's blueprints. The entry was concealed under a section of loose floorboards. When investigators pulled them up, they found a narrow opening, barely 3 feet wide, leading down into darkness. Officer Rourke volunteered to go first. He descended on a ladder. His flashlight revealed a small room, maybe 6 feet by 8 feet. Concrete walls, a low ceiling, cold, and inside were 3 items. A folding chair facing the wall, a tape recorder on the floor, plugged into an outlet fed by the illegal power line, and a notebook. Rourke picked up the notebook with gloved hands. The cover was water-stained. The pages were brittle, but the handwriting inside was unmistakable. It belonged to Marjorie Klein. The notebook contained 47 entries. Short, fragmented, terrified. The first entry was dated March 3, 2017. 2 weeks before Marjorie disappeared. "I found the room today. I don't know how long it's been here. The smell is wrong. Everything is wrong." The entries grew more frantic. March 5th th. He knows I found it. I can hear him upstairs at night. March 8th, locks don't work. I changed them. He still gets in. March 11th, called the police. They said no signs of forced entry. But I know he's here. March 14th, the phone rang at 2:17 a.m. I didn't answer. It rang 14 times then stopped. March 16th, if the phone rings, it's already too late. That was the last entry. The day Marjorie Klein vanished. But the most disturbing thing wasn't what she wrote. It was what investigators found on the tape recorder. The tape inside the recorder was old, magnetic, the kind used in the 80s and 90s. The forensic team brought it back to the lab and digitized it carefully. What they heard made them call in federal investigators. The tape contained recordings of phone calls, dozens of them, all featuring the same 2 voices. Marjorie Klein, and Detective Howard Bell. The calls were dated over several months in 2016 and 2017. Before Marjorie disappeared, in him, Bell's voice was calm, measured, almost gentle. "You need to stop calling the station, Marjorie. People are starting to talk." Marjorie's voice was shaking. "But someone's in my house. I know it. I can feel it. You're imagining things. We've been over this. I'm not. Please, I need help. The only help you need is from your therapist. This is a mental health issue." The recordings continued, call after call, Marjorie begging for help, Bell dismissing her, until the final recording, dated March 16, 2017. 2:17 a.m. Marjorie's voice is barely a whisper. "He's inside. Right now. I can hear him." Bell's voice is different now. Harder. "Stay where you are. Don't move. Please. Please help me. I said don't move." 14 seconds of silence. Then a sound. Footsteps on wood. A door creaking. And the line goes dead. That was the last anyone heard from Marjorie Klein. No bodies were found. No arrests were made. But the recordings changed everything. Detective Howard Bell was brought in for questioning. He refused to speak without his attorney. The district attorney reviewed the evidence. The illegal phone line, the hidden room, the recordings. But they had a problem. No body meant no murder charge. No proof of who installed the room or the phone line. And the recordings, while disturbing, could be interpreted multiple ways. Bell's attorney argued his client was trying to help a mentally unstable woman. That the recordings showed patience, not guilt. That Marjorie's paranoia had been documented by her therapist. And without Marjorie to testify, they had nothing concrete. The case was quietly reclassified. Not reopened, reclassified, as undetermined circumstances. The house was sealed again. The phone was removed. The recordings were filed away. Or so they said, because 2 years later, a maintenance worker reported hearing a ring while passing the property. One ring, then silence. When police checked, they found no phone inside. So here's the question no one has answered. If Marjorie Klein disappeared 7 years ago, who was making the calls? And more importantly, who was answering them? Detective Howard Bell died in 2023. Heart attack. He never spoke about the case again. Ellen Klein still lives in the neighboring county. She keeps her sister's phone number active, just in case. And the house at 1847 Cedar Hollow Road was demolished last year. During demolition, workers found something in the foundation. They won't say what. The police took it as evidence. In an investigation they claim is closed. We filed a Freedom of Information request for the full case files. The police department denied it 3 times, citing ongoing investigation, but officially, the case is closed. So what are they still investigating? And why don't they want us to know? Some stories are forgotten for a reason. Others are buried because someone wants them to stay that way. Tell us in the comments, what do you think happened inside the quiet house? Because once you hear the phone ring, you never forget it. And somewhere, in an evidence locker, a tape is still recording. Waiting for the next call. At 2:17 a.m. exactly 14 seconds long. From a house that no longer exists. To numbers that no one answers. Except one. The one you're holding right now. Your phone. Check your call history. You might be surprised what you find. Subscribe to Mystery Chronicles for stories they don't want you to hear.